At dusk, when the chimney tiles are still warm under your hand and the air smells faintly of wet stone, the western jackdaw is not settling down for the night. It is helping decide when the whole flock leaves. The first time you notice it, it just sounds like a rough little rise in the trees, a few sharp notes under the fading sky. Then the noise builds, and that is the strange part. What looks like simple evening chatter is closer to roost departure voting. One bird calls, then another, and the entire roofline seems to wake up at once. You can hear the moment the group tips from waiting to moving, as if the colony has reached an agreement you were never invited to hear. There is a lot more going on in that sound than people expect. Each bird has its own voice, a call that other jackdaws can pick out from the crowd. They know partners, they know rivals, they know who is close, who is intruding, and who should be watched a little more carefully. Even from across a yard, that recognition is already happening. And then there are the eyes. Pale silver white, almost startling in the wrong light, especially when one is posted at a nest cavity and another bird hesitates nearby. It does not look dramatic to us. To them, it is a warning sign. So when you see a small black shape on a fence, still as a nail, staring back from those pale eyes, the bird is not just present, it is reading the room, and maybe reading you too. If you enjoy these quiet science mysteries, subscribe and stay close. And once you start watching for that, the nest site becomes the place where the whole thing feels most alive. A western jackdaw perched at a hole in brick or wood does not just sit there like a dark shape in the shade. It turns, it angles its head. Those pale silver white eyes catch the light, and suddenly the bird looks almost too alert for the quiet around it. That is not decoration, it is a signal. Other jackdaws can see it from a distance, and when a cavity is already claimed, that bright eye can help keep rivals away before there is any pushing, any noise, any mess. So the warning is visual first, clean, fast, effective. That same sharp attention shows up when a person is nearby. The bird does not only notice that you are present. According to work from the University of Cambridge, it can read where your gaze points. If you look toward the nest hole, or toward the roofline, or even just turn your face the wrong way too long, the jackdaw adjusts. It watches the direction of your eyes as if that alone is part of the weather. And that changes the feeling of an ordinary yard. A person standing with a watering can or pausing by the fence is no longer just a shape moving through space. To the bird, that body has intention. What gets even stranger is how quickly that message spreads. One bird watches you, another hears the tone of the calls around it. The pair at the roof edge shifts together, and the whole little scene tightens, as if the colony has reached the same conclusion at the same time. Once you notice that, the next call sounds different. That same precision shows up again once the bird starts calling back. A western jackdaw does not sound like a stack of identical notes. The calls carry small differences, and to another jackdaw, those differences matter. One voice can mean a familiar partner. Another can mean a rival hanging too close. If you are standing by a fence with damp grass under your shoes, all you hear is a rough, busy burst of sound. But to the flock, that burst is full of identity. So now the scene changes. It is not just one bird watching your face. It is one bird hearing another bird and deciding in an instant who belongs in that space and who does not. That is what makes the colony chorus so important. It is not a single noise. It is layered, shifting, full of tiny personal differences that the birds seem to carry around like names. A call from the roof can settle one bird and stiffen another. A reply from the edge of the yard can pull a pair closer together. You may never spot the exact exchange, but the reaction is right there in front of you. A head turn, a pause, a bird stepping sideways on the branch. And once that happens, the information does not stay between two birds for long. Because these are corvids, and they remember. A jackdaw that has learned which human stands still, which one startles, which one feeds, which one stares too long, can carry that knowledge with it. Then another bird picks up the same habit. Another hears the warning in a call. Another sees the pattern and shifts just a little farther back. So when the flock sounds different around one person than another, it may not be mood at all. It may be shared memory. And the next call might tell you whether you are already known. That recognition does not stay trapped in one pair of eyes. A Western jackdaw that has learned your habits does not just keep that knowledge to itself. It carries it into the next meeting, the next perch, the next call from the roof edge. One bird has seen you in the garden with slow hands and no sudden turn. Another has heard the same bird settle before you even looked up. In that small way, the bird starts to become part of a shared record. And that is where the yard gets quiet in a different way. Just attentive. You open the back door, hear the scratch of claws on slate, smell damp leaves and old wood. And the bird does not react as if every human is the same. It checks you. Then it checks the others. The pale silver-white eyes matter here too, because that bright look is not only for nest defense. It sits inside a social world where one bird notices another bird noticing you. A call from one side of the fence can pull the whole group into a softer edge of caution, or a calmer one, depending on what has already been learned. So when a jackdaw stays on the line while you move below it, that is not a small thing. It may mean this individual has already been told in its own rough little way that you are familiar enough to ignore, or at least familiar enough to watch without alarm. And once that idea lands, the next sound matters more. Because the colony is never only hearing the yard, it is hearing each other about the yard. And one bird near the gutter has just answered with a call that sounds almost like recognition. That shared memory changes the whole edge of the yard. A Western jackdaw does not live alone with what it knows. If one bird has spent days watching your slow hands at the feeder or your shoes moving across the same patch of grass, that impression does not vanish when it flies off. It goes back into the group. Another bird sees the same shape, hears the same rough call, and picks up the tone in the colony chorus. The message is not spoken out loud the way we would speak it, but it moves. So now you can stand at the back door and feel the difference. The air smells like wet bark and old leaves. The metal rail is cool under your palm, and the birds are reacting to a history. One bird may stay a little higher than before. Another may edge closer after the first one settles. That is the strange grace of it, really. A small social world making room, or not making room, based on what it has already learned. The pale silver-white eyes matter again here, because they sit inside that exchange like a flag at the gate. One glance, one turn, one delay at the cavity or feeder, and the rest can read the shape of the moment. Not like a script, just enough. And if you have ever wondered why some mornings feel calm while others feel watchful, this is part of the answer. The bird on the wire is not only watching you, it may be checking whether you are the same person the others were talking about yesterday. Which means the next call from the roof is a decision settling in place, and the one at the corner of the gutter has just given a very short reply. By now, the pattern is starting to feel almost physical. You hear one call, then another, and the bird at the edge of the roof seems to answer before the rest even settle on a direction. That is the part people miss. The Western jackdaw is not waiting for a perfect signal from one leader. The group is building its decision inside the noise. A few sharp calls, a shift in posture, wings half open in the cold air, and the whole flock begins to tip toward movement. It looks sudden from below, but it has been gathering for a while. If you stand under that roofline long enough, you start to notice the small tells. One bird stays a little longer than the others. One turns its head toward the yard, almost as if it reads your gaze before it goes. Another lands beside it, then both go quiet for just a beat. That tiny pause matters. It is the kind of pause that comes right before a colony chorus rises, and the birds decide they have enough information. And your presence is still part of it, not because they are panicking, but because they are measuring. Slow steps, a raised arm, the sound of a door, the shape of your face when you look up. All of that gets folded into the moment. The bird on the wire does not need to spell it out. It only needs to keep watching. So the yard becomes a place where movement, memory, and caution all sit on the same branch. You hear the calls, you see the hesitation, you feel the change in the air before anything actually leaves. And then, one bird opens its wings, just a little earlier than the rest. From there, the whole place starts to feel different. The roof is still the same roof. The fence post is still damp in the evening. The gutter still clicks softly as the air cools. But once you have watched that first bird lift its wings before the others, you begin to understand that the space around your home is not empty between visits. It is being remembered. One pair returns to the same edge of brick. Another lands first on the same wire, then waits. A third hangs back until the first two settle. None of that looks dramatic. It looks ordinary. Right up until you realize the pattern repeats. The same birds seem to trust the same landing places, hesitate at the same corners, and relax faster when the same human is standing below. That is the personal part of the science. A corvid colony does not only know a location by shape, it can know it by experience. A yard with steady movement, predictable sounds, and no sudden pressure can become easier to enter. Known, familiar enough that the birds do not have to start from zero each time. And you can hear that familiarity if you listen carefully. The calls are still rough, still dry and scratchy in the throat of the evening, but they do not all carry the same edge. Some sound like checking in. Some sound like mild correction. Some feel almost casual, as if the business of judging this place was settled earlier. That is when the colony stops feeling like a crowd and starts feeling like a neighborhood. And just as that thought lands, one bird drops to a lower perch than you expected, close enough now that its next choice matters. That lower perch is where it becomes impossible to pretend this is all random. The bird lands on the fence, claws ticking once on the wood, and holds there, just settled. The air has that cool evening smell of damp soil and stone, and you can hear the rest of the flock higher up, shifting in small, dry rustles above the roofline. This one stays lower than the others, where it can watch both the yard and the colony. And what it does next is quiet but revealing. It looks at you, then past you. More like a quick measure. A Western jackdaw reads your gaze, and once you know that, the whole moment changes shape. If your eyes stay on the bird, it notices. If you glance toward the nest hole, or the place where the others are gathering, it notices that too. You are not only seeing the scene, you are part of the scene being read. That is why some birds seem bolder than they really are. They are not fearless, they are informed. The one on the fence may already know your pace, your posture, the way you move your shoulders before turning. It may know, from the others, that this yard usually settles after a few seconds, and that this particular human does not press closer. Then the sound above begins to gather again, enough to tighten the air. A few calls stitch together from roof to branch to gutter, and the colony starts leaning toward a single mood. The bird on the fence hears it first. You can see that in the small lift of its head, and for one breath, it does not leave. By now, the evening is almost done, but the bird on the wire still has not made its choice. The last light is thinning across the roof tiles, and the western jackdaw keeps shifting its weight, claws tight on the metal, head turning in quick little checks. Below it, the yard is quiet, except for the dry click of branches and the soft, uneven calls still moving through the flock. Nothing in that scene is loud, and that is what makes it feel so loaded. The whole place is waiting on one more small decision. This is where the earlier science comes back in a different shape. The calls are not just noise, and the movement is not just a reflex. The colony chorus is holding together a set of impressions. The people it knows, the corners it trusts, the places it has judged before. One bird lowers its head, another steps sideways. A third turns toward the darker end of the roof as if the answer might be there. And the human below is still part of that answer. A glance up, a pause in the doorway, the shape of your shoulders against the last light. All of it is being folded into the moment. The bird does not need to look dramatic to be reading the room. It only needs to keep watching. Then something almost too small to notice happens. The perched bird gives one short call, not loud, just firm, and the others answer in a way that feels like agreement. It is not the full liftoff yet, but it is close enough that the air changes. And then, at last, the answer comes. The small call from the fence is enough. One bird answers from the roof, then another, and the whole edge of the house seems to gather itself in a single breath. Wings open in the cool dark, one after another, and the western jackdaw that had stayed low lifts at the same time as the rest, in agreement. For a moment, the yard is full of sound. Not a rush, not a storm, just that rough, living burst that rises when a colony has settled on its move. Then the dark shapes wheel out over the garden, passing the chimney, slipping past the last strip of light on the tiles. The wire is empty. The fence goes still. Even the air feels different. What stays with you is the tiny thing that happened just before that rise. The bird did not bolt away from you. It waited, checked, called, and only then left with the others. That is the quiet gift of the whole scene. Not that the jackdaws are mysterious, but that they are paying attention, remembering, and deciding together in a world you can stand inside. By the time the last call fades, the only thing left on the fence is the place where it had been. A warm little patch of wood, a few feathers caught in the grain, and the feeling that the yard was never empty at all, only shared. The roof goes dark, but one pale eye flashes once from the far side of the garden before it disappears. If you want more quiet science like this, subscribe and stay with me for the next one.